January 26, 1945. The small town of Holtzwihr, France, was covered in snow. 6 German panzer tanks moved toward American soldiers. Lieutenant Audie Murphy watched from his position as the first tank aimed its gun at his men. Suddenly, a shell hit. An M10 tank destroyer burst into flames. Murphy's soldiers spread out for cover, while German infantry rushed out of the woods behind the tanks. About 250 German soldiers faced Murphy's small force of only 18 men. Most of his soldiers were new and had never been in battle. Murphy ordered them to move back to the tree line about 300 yards behind. They all followed his order, but Murphy stayed. The 19-year-old lieutenant walked alone across the frozen field toward the burning tank destroyer. Machine gun bullets hit the snow around his feet, and artillery shells screamed through the sky above him. The tank destroyer's ammunition was exploding, sending blasts in every direction. Murphy climbed onto the burning vehicle, grabbed the .50 caliber machine gun on top, and aimed it to the advancing German soldiers. What happened next shocked everyone. It was hard to believe one person could do so much under heavy fire. But many experts had underestimated Audie Murphy from the very beginning. 3 years earlier, the day after attack on Pearl Harbor, a 17-year-old boy from rural Texas went to a Marine Corps recruiting office. He was determined to join. But the recruiter laughed. Audie Murphy was only 5'5" tall and weighed 112 pounds. He looked too young and too small, so they rejected him without even testing him. He tried the Army paratroopers, rejected again, too small. He tried the Navy, rejected. They said they needed sailors, not children. Murphy did not give up. He grew up very poor in Texas during the Great Depression. He was one of 12 children. His father left the family, and his mother died when he was 16. To help his younger brothers and sisters survive, Murphy hunted, trapped animals, and picked cotton. Murphy learned early that you don't quit just because something is hard. War was not an adventure for Audie Murphy. To him, it was a job that had to be done. In June 1942, the regular army finally accepted him, only because his older sister, Karen, changed his papers to say he was 18 instead of 17. At training camp in Texas, drill instructors saw his young face and thought he would fail quickly. During bayonet practice, bigger soldiers knocked him down again and again. On the obstacle course, he struggled to climb walls that taller soldiers crossed easily. Some sergeants believed he would not last. They said he had courage, but courage alone could not stop bullets, and they thought he should be sent to an easier job like cooking. Murphy left for war with the 3rd Infantry Division in February 1943. Many experienced soldiers bet that the thin 112-pound teenager would not last long in combat. Most guessed less than a week. They were wrong. Murphy's first battle came during the Allied invasion of Sicily in July 1943. While other soldiers stayed low under German machine gun fire, Audie Murphy crawled forward alone. He moved around a stone farmhouse and shot 2 German soldiers with his M1 carbine before anyone realized he was there. When the fighting ended, His company commander looked at the skinny teenager standing among dead enemy soldiers, surprised by what he had done. "Murphy, what were you thinking? They were in our way, sir." This happened again and again, in Sicily, Italy, and later in France. Audie Murphy turned his small size into an advantage. He could move through places bigger soldiers could not. His hunting skills made him an excellent shooter, and his hard childhood made him tough enough to survive harsh conditions. By January 1945, Murphy had been promoted on the battlefield to second lieutenant. He had already been wounded 3 times, and the third wound in October 1944 almost killed him. A sniper's bullet tore through Audie Murphy's hip. The wound became badly infected, and he spent months in the hospital while doctors considered amputating his leg. Eventually, the infection improved, and in mid-January 1945, he was cleared to return to duty. Murphy rejoined Company B only 12 days before the battle at Holtz. He was still limping from his injury. Most officers would have taken more time to recover, but Murphy didn't. His men needed him, and he never walked away from a job that had to be done. The sergeants who once laughed at him in training were now saluting him, but his hardest test was still ahead. By the time they reached the frozen woods outside Holtz, Audie Murphy's company was down to only 18 men. Most experienced soldiers had been killed. The new replacements were young and had never been in real combat. At dawn on January 26th, the German attack began. 6 Panzer tanks rolled out of the morning fog, with about 250 German infantry soldiers advancing behind them. Audie Murphy called for artillery support and told his tank destroyers to move forward. The first M10 was hit directly by a German panzer and burst into flames as the crew escaped. The second tank destroyer tried to pull back, but German infantry had already moved around the American position. Murphy's small force was close to being surrounded and destroyed. The radio operator turned pale with fear. "Lieutenant, we have to retreat. There are too many of them." Audie Murphy made the decision that would define his life. "Everyone fall back to the tree line. Artillery observer, stay with me." His men hesitated, not wanting to leave him, but Murphy gave a clear order. As his soldiers pulled back toward the woods, he walked forward alone through machine gun fire toward the burning tank destroyer. The burning tank destroyer sat in the middle of an open field with no cover for 300 yards. German machine gun fire swept across the frozen ground, and the tank's ammunition was exploding, sending shells flying in all directions. Audie Murphy climbed onto the vehicle. Flames rose from the engine, and the metal deck was so hot it could burn through his boots. Smoke poured from every opening. Standing on this blazing, dangerous machine, Murphy grabbed the M2 Browning .50 caliber machine gun and aimed at the advancing Germans. The first burst cut down 3 soldiers. He quickly adjusted and fired again, killing 4 more. The Germans had assumed the burning tank destroyer was empty, but suddenly it was not. The tank destroyer had turned into a deadly fortress, with a lone defender who refused to die. Bullets bounced off its armor, and rounds whizzed past Murphy's head. An artillery shell landed just 10 yards away, showering him with frozen dirt and shrapnel. Yet he kept firing. Something extraordinary was happening. The small size that had once gotten him rejected by every military branch now became a huge advantage. On top of the tank destroyer, he was a smaller target than a bigger soldier would have been. His years of hunting taught him to track several targets at once. His tough upbringing allowed him to ignore the burning heat under his feet and the smoke filling his lungs. But it wasn't just physical skill. It was something more. Audie Murphy had spent his whole life being underestimated. Every drill instructor who said he would fail, every soldier who bet he wouldn't last a week, every German who saw the baby-faced lieutenant and assumed he would break. Murphy had made a career out of proving people wrong. The Germans tried to flank him. Murphy spotted them and called artillery strikes through the field radio, hitting within 50 yards of his own position. They tried a direct assault. His .50 caliber gun cut them down in groups. They tried to have tanks target him. He kept firing even as shells exploded around the burning vehicle. For 1 hour, Murphy stood alone on that burning tank destroyer and held off an entire German company by himself. Then Murphy felt a sharp impact in his right leg. A German machine gun burst had hit him. Blood soaked his pants, and his leg buckled slightly, but he locked his knee and kept firing. The ammunition belt for his .50 caliber gun was almost empty. Murphy fired the last rounds carefully, making every bullet count. When the gun finally went silent, he had been on top of the burning tank destroyer for over an hour. The German attack had stopped. The field was covered with bodies. Later, witnesses counted over 40 dead Germans nearby. The total German casualties exceeded 50 killed or wounded. One man, armed with just a single machine gun, had stopped an attack by 6 tanks and 250 infantry. Murphy climbed down from the burning tank destroyer. His right leg was barely holding him up. The artillery observer stared at him in shock. "Lieutenant, you're hit." "I noticed," Murphy replied. He limped 300 yards back to his company's position. His men came out of cover, several openly crying at the sight of him alive. Instead of getting medical help, Audie Murphy organized his men for a counterattack. Despite his wounded leg, the burns on his feet, and surviving an hour of combat that could have killed him many times over, Murphy led his 18 men forward and pushed the remaining Germans out of Holtz. Only after the objective was secured did he let a medic check his leg. He had been standing on that burning tank destroyer for 20 minutes with a bullet through his calf, and no one even knew because Murphy never stopped fighting. The official after-action reports from Holtz sounded almost unbelievable. Officers reviewing Audie Murphy's Medal of Honor citation at first wondered if the story had been exaggerated. One man on top of a burning vehicle holding off 250 German soldiers and 6 tanks for an hour? It went against all military logic. But there were 18 American witnesses and captured German soldiers who confirmed every detail. Some German prisoners even asked to meet the officer who had stopped their attack. When they saw the small, baby-faced lieutenant, many refused to believe it. They had assumed they were facing a full-strength company with heavy weapons, not a single teenager with a machine gun. The Medal of Honor was presented to Murphy by Lieutenant General Alexander Patch on June 2nd. In 1945, near Salzburg, Murphy received the Medal of Honor, but that was just the beginning. By the end of the war, he had earned every U.S. combat award. France gave him the Legion of Honor, and Belgium awarded him the Belgian Croix de Guerre. In total, Audie Murphy received 33 medals and awards, making him the most decorated American combat soldier of World War II. The teenager, who had been too small to enlist, became a one-man army, estimated to have killed 240 German soldiers over 2 years of continuous combat. He was wounded 3 times and fought in 9 major campaigns across North Africa, Sicily, Italy, France, and Germany. By age 21, when the war ended, Murphy was already a legend. After the war, Audie Murphy's story caught Hollywood's attention. Actor James Cagney saw Murphy's photo on the cover of Life magazine and invited him to California. Murphy's film career peaked in 1955 when he starred in To Hell and Back, playing himself. The movie became Universal's highest-grossing film until Jaws came 20 years later. But fame could not quiet his memories of war. Murphy suffered from severe post-traumatic stress disorder. In the 1940s, no one had a name for what Murphy was going through. He slept with a loaded .45 pistol under his pillow and suffered violent nightmares. What made it worse was that America expected its heroes to be strong and unbreakable. Murphy spoke out about the psychological wounds of war and became an advocate for better care for veterans, sharing his struggles when few others would. On May 28, 1971, Audie Murphy died in a plane crash in Virginia at the age of 45. The man who had survived being shot 3 times stood on a burning tank destroyer against an entire German company and fought through 2 years of the deadliest war in history, had died in a sudden accident. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. His grave became one of the most visited at Arlington, second only to President Kennedy's. Today, veterans visit Audie Murphy's grave to salute him. Tourists bring their children to share the story of the boy who was once too small to fight, but became the most decorated soldier in American history. The gravestone is simple. It shows his name, rank, and dates. It doesn't list his 33 medals. It doesn't need to. The military that laughed at Audie Murphy in 1942 studied his tactics for decades afterward. His one-man stand at Holtzwihr became required reading at officer training schools. Not because soldiers should copy it. The Army warned that Murphy's actions were extremely risky, but because it showed what is possible when courage, skill, and a complete refusal to give up come together in one person. Audie Murphy's story has become legendary, but the real events are even more powerful than the myth. A 112-pound teenager who was rejected by every military branch, a soldier who had to forge papers just to serve, a lieutenant who stood alone on a burning tank destroyer for an hour and stopped an entire German company. Murphy's greatest legacy may be what he represents to anyone who has been underestimated because of how they look. Every short kid told they couldn't compete. Every thin teenager told they weren't strong enough. Every person who grew up in poverty and was told their background would hold them back can take inspiration from Murphy. He proved that what matters isn't what others think you can do, it's what you refuse to stop trying to achieve.
The recruiters were wrong, the drill instructors were wrong. The soldiers who bet he wouldn't last a week in combat were catastrophically wrong. Even the German forces at Holtz, who assumed the small American lieutenant would break easily, were proven wrong.
They learned their mistake at the cost of 50 casualties. Audie Murphy spent his life being told he was too small to matter. He responded by making a bigger impact than almost anyone of his generation. This isn't just a war story, it's a lesson that never gets old. The people who are rejected the most often become the ones who change history. Murphy's grave reminds us that true heroism isn't about size. The man everyone said was too weak to fight became the soldier who wouldn't quit.